We were born in 1964, brothers and one sister, fed by a deep faith in God and in ourselves, with a common purpose: to fight the cause for those who can't, to grow and develop our St. Lucia to meet the basic social and economic needs of our people, a job for every man and woman, decent, affordable housing, universal education, quality medical care regardless of level of income, adequate social security, especially for senior citizens and the disabled. We believe in religious freedom, democracy and the rule of law, racial and social harmony, elimination of gender discrimination and political victimization, free enterprise, cultural, social and economic progress, conservation of our environment, economic empowerment of St. Lucians and indigenous ownership of economic activity, economic empowerment of St. Lucians and indigenous ownership of economic activity, regulation of foreign investment for the development of our country. We are the party with vision. We are the party that develops. We are proud of our decades of success. We believe in ourselves. We are proud of ourselves. We are the preferred party. We are the party of choice. 2024, together we celebrate our 60th birthday. We are one family. We are the United Workers, and this is our party, the United Workers' Party.
Today, at police headquarters at Chesterfield, sits an acting chief of police accused of sexual misconduct against certain female officers of the Royal Police Force. In 2023, we find ourselves confronting a disturbing reality that our acting Commissioner of Police, entrusted with the safety of our communities, stands accused of sexual misconduct. The Prime Minister put him there. You see, without Philip J. Pierre's agreement, he cannot hold that office, because our Constitution is clear that the Prime Minister must give his approval for the appointment of the Commissioner of Police. These allegations by female officers are damning and egregious. The letters from the alleged victims are all there in the police records. The Police Welfare Association sent copies of those letters to the Prime Minister before he appointed the acting commissioner to that trustworthy position. And to date, there is little to no action taken. Philip J. Pierre flings his hands in the air and says in a pitiful and helpless voice, "What can I do about it?" Well, this is what you can do about it, Mr. Pierre. Require that the acting commissioner be placed on administrative leave until an independent investigation has been conducted and he is cleared of these allegations. And what are we going to do about it? What are we women going to do about it? We will not sit by and watch this travesty against women. Let me be clear. We refuse to accept this in 2023. We women refuse to allow the progress that we have made over all these years to be undermined by recklessness, cowardice, and inaction. Prime Minister Pierre, do you really believe that we would allow you to appoint a commissioner of police shrouded in allegations of sexual misconduct without objection? Do you understand the power of women? We refuse to let our voices be silenced and our dignity shattered. We will rise up from every walk of life and make our voices heard. We will stand united on an issue that affects every woman in our society. mothers, grandmothers, sisters, and daughters. We stand with those brave female officers, our sisters, who are immensely fearful for the repercussions of speaking out. We stand with the St. Lucia Police Welfare Association in its quest for justice. We stand with the Regional Police Welfare Association that is appalled that the acting commissioner has not been placed on leave to facilitate an investigation. We stand with the many police officers, both male and female, that have expressed their outrage to us. We stand with the civil society organizations that have raised their voices. We call upon the members of parliament, religious leaders, and all influential figures to stand in solidarity. So where are you, Madam Minister, responsible for gender affairs, the Honorable Virginia Poyot? Where is your voice? Where do you stand, the Honorable Emma Hippolyte? Where do you stand, Senator Antoine Prosper, Senator Jawahir, Senator Toussaint Charlery, and Senator Jean? Where are the voices of those responsible for women's advocacy and protection? Our collective voices must resonate in one resounding chorus from Grosillette to Vieux-Fort. The acting commissioner of police must step aside or be removed from office until an independent investigation has been conducted and he is cleared of these allegations, or we will protest. We will take all necessary measures to ensure that our top cop is a man of integrity, a man in whom we can repose faith and confidence. We are of one mind in this. We are of unwavering determination, and together we are an unstoppable force.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Let me say a special good morning to those listening and watching throughout the length and breadth of St. Lucia, and a special good morning to our listeners and viewers in the diaspora. This morning's press conference is lent specially to deal with the 2.5% health and security levy imposed by our government. And we will be speaking on that subject. Subsequently, we will be opening ourselves to the media should they have any questions that we may be able to answer. But to start off this morning's press conference, I will introduce Senator Herod Stanislas, who will be the first presenter for the morning. So I hand over to Senator Stanislas.
A pleasant good morning to you, our viewers, our listeners, persons from the diaspora, our supporters, members, and of course our friends of the media. I take this opportunity to wish every St. Lucian all the best for this momentous emancipation season. On August 1st, St. Lucia joined what was once known as the British West Indies in celebrating our freedom from what I call man's greatest injustice to man. Today, I am deeply saddened that the Prime Minister and his government has chosen this time in the history of our country, a time of anemic economic growth, rampant violent crime, unprecedented and horrific number of murders, and crippling unemployment to further burden the St. Lucian public with more economic and financial hardship. A time when a large majority of the people of this country are wrestling to feed their families and pay their basic household bills. A time when most parents are worried about finding the money to send their children back to school for this new school year. A time when most small businesses don't know how long they will be able to keep their doors open. A time when the undeterred, spiraling cost of living is causing havoc with household finances. As a responsible party, we cannot sit by idly and allow the government to continue along this destructive path. Today, we, the opposition, declare strident objection to this additional 2.5% health and security levy, which came into effect yesterday, August 2nd, 2023, on the heels of our historic Emancipation Day celebrations. What is the point of making such a big fuss over our freedom from the bondage of a repugnant slavocracy when at the same time this government is callously tightening the noose of economic and financial bondage on the people of St. Lucia? The implementation of this 2.5% levy by this government at this time is nothing but the action of an uncaring, clueless, inept, and totally out-of-touch government. We understand that every government needs resources to develop the country, but it cannot be that every time this Labour government gets into office, the first place they seek additional financial resources is to dig deeper into the pockets of an already overburdened population, the same people they claim they would put first. St. Lucia, this government is not putting you first, it is putting you worse. A prudent government would not only look for other ways to raise additional monies, but would also explore ways to conserve and cut unnecessary spending to make way for priority areas. Is it a priority for the government to increase consultancy fees from $81 million to $122 million? Who does the government need to pay they have increased consultancy fees by a whopping $41 million? Is this a slush fund for jobs for the boys and girls? Is this to create an account to pay back those who funded this government's election campaign? The government projected $33 million of additional revenue from the implementation of this new levy. If the government needs more money to take care of the affairs of the country, why did it not keep consultancy fees at $81 million, the same as it was in last year's budget, rather than increase the fees to the consultancy friends, family, and cliques by $41 million? If the government had done so, this would have made an additional $41 million available for the health and security sectors. This simple act of prudent financial management would have resulted in an additional allocation of $8 million more for the vital, yet deprived healthcare and national security sectors, without having to delve into the pockets of an already impoverished people. This government, like previous Labour governments, is guilty of having its priorities upside down. Is it a priority at this time for the government to spend $1 million to repair a house in Washington, D.C. for an ambassador who is the wife of a senior member of the Labour Party? This is the same ambassador who took the previous government to court for wrongful dismissal and lost, but has been reinstated by this Labour administration. Is it a priority of this government to increase government rental expenditure by $5 million while allowing the price of bread and bus fares to go up on the poor people of this country? Why didn't the government use that $5 million to continue to subsidize flour and fuel to ensure that bus fares and bread did not go up? The Prime Minister has allocated $5 million to his office for a distress fund. No one but them knows how this fund operates. No one but them knows who qualifies to access it. And no one but them knows the process for accessing these distress funds. Couldn't the Prime Minister have allocated at least half of that money towards purchasing toilet paper and medication for our hospitals, which are always out of such basic necessities? This tax will be the death blow for the parents preparing to send their children to school next month. As a direct consequence of the government's implementation of this 2.5% levy, already struggling parents will have to dig deeper to pay for shoes, uniforms, bags, ribbons, socks, and other school supplies. This speaks to what is the priority of the government. We all agree that health and security is and should be a priority. However, there is no justification for the implementation of the 2.5% levy because there is no program or project in the estimates of revenue and expenditure in this financial year that focuses on either. The Prime Minister, in announcing the advent of the new levy of 2.5%, led Parliament and the country to believe the new tax was earmarked for the health and security sectors. However, the Chamber of Commerce, in the deliberations with the technocrats from the Ministry of Finance, discovered that the funds raised by the levy will go directly into the consolidated funds, totally contrary to what the Prime Minister led Parliament and the country to believe. Does this mean that there is no special allocation for either health or security? I would like my colleagues on the other side to please clarify. As I said earlier, a close scrutiny of the estimates of expenditure and revenue reveals that there are no new projects or programs within the two departments to justify the tax. For example, there is no additional allocation for judges or magistrates to help relieve the backlog of cases in our court system, nor for the refurbishment of our courts. Is it true that the magistrate court in Vieux Fort has been closed for over 2 years? Is it also true that the court is closed because it requires refurbishment? If the government is serious about the health and security of the citizens and our many visitors to this country, as their rushed implementation of the 2.5% health and security levy suggests, why isn't there an allocation in this financial year's estimates of revenue and expenditure for the refurbishment of the Vieux Fort Magistrates Court? There is no allocation for the hiring of additional police officers, no money allocated for the full operationalization of the forensic lab. One would have expected that a competent government would have made an allocation to remedy the perennial shortfalls in these critical departments from the windfall derived from the collection of the health and security levy. Where is the allocation for the Border Control Agency to stem the inflow of illegal guns, drugs, and the victims of human trafficking into our country? Where is the money for additional scanning machines for our ports of entry? Where is the additional money for the desperately needed detection dogs, which this Prime Minister, in a recent speech in the House of Parliament, ignorantly declared as unnecessary and outrageously expensive? Under the title Health, in this year's financial estimates of revenue expenditure, there is no allocation for the reconstruction of St. Jude's Hospital, a project that has been 14 years in the making and something this SLP government campaigned so vociferously for when they were in opposition. How much will it cost to complete St. Jude's? When will the construction commence? Who will be the contractor? How long will it take? And equally important, has the ministry responsible submitted drawings and designs to the DCA for approval? Has approval to recommence construction been granted? The government has remained mute in response to these important questions, yet still they have implemented a 2.5% more taxes on the backs of St. Lucians. Where is the transparency and accountability that this government promised us? Consequently, we are left with no choice but to conclude that the government is not telling the people of St. Lucia the truth. The additional tax is nothing more than a compound increase in VAT to ensure that they can continue to live lavishly at the expense of the taxpayer. They need money to continue to hire their friends, family, and comrades. It is amazing that we, the people of this country, are asked to make these enormous sacrifices while this government increases the allocations to hire their friends, family, and consultants. We are asked to tie our waist and to dig deeper into our empty pockets while they have increased every area of unnecessary spending to protect their victory. They refuse to cut the fat pork out of the bloated and dismal functioning operations. I conclude by saying that the government of the United Workers' Party would never put an additional tax on the backs of St. Lucians in a time like this. We believe in lightening the tax burden on the people of and businesses in St. Lucia whenever it is possible. We did so in our last term in office. We reduced the VAT from 15% to 12.5%, and had it not been for the financial and economic fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic, we would have implemented further reductions in various areas to further ease the burden for St. Lucians. We would have continued to explore creative ways to fund government projects, including infrastructural projects, as we did with the National Road Rehabilitation Project, the Hiwanora International Airport Redevelopment Project, and so many others. We would have continued to subsidize flour to ensure that the price of bread did not go up in this time of high inflation and escalating cost of living. We would have never increased the price of gas to $17.95 per gallon and keep it at $17 even when the cost of a barrel of Brent crude oil on the world market has decreased appreciably. St. Lucia boasts the ignominy of having the highest price of fuel in the Eastern Caribbean. This is a heartless and uncaring government, St. Lucians. They care only about protecting the victory and not the people of this country. Their policies on crime have failed. Their policies on social activities, social interventions have failed. The health policies have failed. The economic policies have failed. We do not support this tax, and we ask the government to reconsider this abomination. We have been informed that the Manufacturers Association has written a letter of complaint to the Prime Minister. Is it because he failed to keep his promise to them? It is very clear that this government is not ready to govern. They are confused and out of their league. They have no solid plans, and they are busy trying to cover up this failed implementation of an additional 2.5% tax. I hope that good sense prevails and the government relieves the people of St. Lucia by the annulment of this additional, unnecessary, and cruel tax. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Stanislas. And as we continue, let me say this. While St. Lucians were being dazzled by our government with celebrations, celebrating the second anniversary in office, their victory, celebrating emancipation, we found ourselves next day waking up to the imposition of a 2.5% levy on the backs of St. Lucia, further exacerbating the high cost of living and making life more difficult for especially the poor in this country. In a country where inflation is already high, it would be expected that a government would do everything in their power to alleviate the plight of their citizens by implementing policies that would lighten the burden that St. Lucians face with regard to the high cost of living. And I say that there is a high cost of inflation in St. Lucia today because 5% inflation is considered to be high. And if you look at the figures of 2022, we were hovering about 6.4%. And as you would well appreciate, the situation has worsened in the last year. Quite apart from the plight of the poor in St. Lucia, I worry as well about what implications those policies will have for our medium, small, and micro businesses that exist in this country today. Because while the larger, more established business establishments may be able to absorb that 2.5% levy, that in itself will make the smaller businesses uncompetitive and may even result in the folding up of startup businesses. This is certainly not the approach that should be taken if you were to build an economy. As we would well know, in situations where additional costs are placed on merchants, they will naturally pass on that cost to the consumer, making life harder for especially single parents in this country and low-income citizens of this country. We want to ensure that our policies as a country does not stifle the growth of our people and our entrepreneurs, but instead provide the environment for them to grow and for our economy to prosper. What we see with the St. Lucia Labour Party is a policy of extensive and almost singular approach of taxation that is imposed on St. Lucians to the extent that, quite apart from the implications of the external inflation that we are experiencing, we here locally, through the policies of our government, are compounding the situation with the creation of even more inflation. And so I call on the government to review their approach, to take stock of their policies that has been to date and will continue to be deleterious to the economic prospects of our poor people especially and our small businesses. Because they must understand that with the approach of overtaxing the population as they are doing now, what will happen is that people will have less disposable income. As a result of having less disposable income, there will be less spending on discretionary goods and services. As a result of this, what we will experience is a decrease in the level of commerce taking place in this country. Consequently, we will have a shrinkage of the economy, and we St. Lucians will be experiencing harder times than we are already experiencing. And so, while the government did nothing to stem the tide of their part in terms of implementing the local inflation, because we can do very little, I must confess, about the international inflation that we inherit. What they could have done was, as my colleague indicated, continue the subsidies on some of the basic items, okay, where we could have kept the price of some of our staples, such as bread, from increasing. We have a situation where, in recent times, bread has gone from 25 cents to 45 cents. We have a situation where the cost of transportation has increased. Doesn't the government realize the impact that has on the poor and even the middle class of this country? Almost all of us, in some form or fashion, use transportation. Almost all of us eat bread on a daily basis. But quite apart from the increase in the price of bread creating hardship for especially parents, the increase in transportation cost has implications for many other commercial developments in this country. And of course, the increase in the price of fuel, it's not the increase, but the high cost of fuel in this country resulted in the increase of transportation, while the government was boasting about the enormous revenue being derived from the taxation on fuel. This is not a government that is concerned or cares about the plight of its people. This is not a government that has its people's best interests at heart. And of course, quite apart from that, the approach to economic development is one that has failed and has not stood the test of time. To try to get blood out of stone, and like my colleague indicated, with an already anemic economy, if you continue to bleed that economy, what will eventually happen is that you're going to kill the economy. And so we advise as an opposition that the government take a different approach. And they would be well advised if they were to adopt some of the policies of the United Workers' Party. As you know, when we were in office the last time, as opposed to the 2.5% increase in taxes that we are experiencing now, the United Workers' Party government reduced the VAT by 2.5%. That is what you call a caring government, with an approach that is more beneficial to economic growth than what is being done now. What we saw was that we put more money, disposable income, in the pockets of the average man, which resulted in more spending, which resulted in more business, which resulted in growth of the economy, which resulted in a better quality of life for St. Lucians. And so with a United Workers' Party government, what you will experience is a government that will seek to expand the economic base of St. Lucia with a view to growing the economy and resulting in a better quality of life for St. Lucians, especially poor people and small businesses. So we call on the government, given the fact that St. Lucians are already suffering from the staggering high inflation that we are experiencing, do not exacerbate the situation. Do something to alleviate our plight by reversing that onerous, burdensome tax that they have just imposed on St. Lucians. And St. Lucians, do not lose focus, because while you are being lured into all kinds of celebrations and fetes, you are being impoverished daily by the policies and programs that they're sneaking on you as they continue to make your life worse off, and they continue to make the country regress. The government should focus on ensuring that St. Lucians are protected rather than focusing on protecting their victory. We are already living in fear for our safety in this country. And with the imposition of this tax here now, with the conceivable implications that it will have on poor people and small businesses, I can imagine the fear that people will have now for their economic survival. The United Workers' Party once again call on the government to do the right thing. Stop extorting from the people of St. Lucia more and more, instead of providing for them an environment where they can grow and get more and more from a buoyant economy, if they do the right thing and implement the right policies. I thank you. So now we are open to questions from the media. If you should have any questions for Senator Stanislaus or myself, feel free to proceed.
Senator, earlier when you were speaking about the levy, you said by implementing this levy, it shows that this government is on the current government. However, Prime Minister Bill J.P. recently indicated that the levy was implemented with a view of having a minimum inflationary impact. What's your response to that?
Well, as we articulated, this 2.5% levy is going to have serious financial implications for the people of St. Lucia. It's a compounded tax, and no matter how you look at it, it's added to cost insurance and freight. To merchants, whom my colleague said earlier, is going to pass the cost to consumers. So definitely the people of St. Lucia will have to take out more from their pockets for certain goods and services. So it is going to make life worse for people. The Prime Minister knows very well that this is going to have a negative impact on the livelihoods of St. Lucians, and he's deliberately trying to mislead the population to think that nothing is going to happen financially to them.
We also spoke about St. Jude Hospital earlier. The government had made Chesterfield $200 million from the Saudi Arabian government to complete the hospital. Do you think it's a step in the right direction?
Would you repeat your question?
I said you spoke about St. Jude's Hospital earlier.
Mhm.
The government just secured $200 million from the Saudi Arabian government. I don't believe to complete the hospital. Don't you think that's a step in the right direction?
Well, I would hope that if they receive this money from the Saudi Arabian government, they would fast track the completion of St. Jude's Hospital, because St. Jude's Hospital is a national project which needs to be completed. It impacts people not only in the south of the island, but the entire of St. Lucia. And if they did receive that money from the Saudi Arabian, we're hoping that they're going to come out and explain to the nation the process of which this money is going to be used in terms of completion of St. Jude, in terms of contractors, in terms of approvals from this year, which I alluded to earlier, timelines and all of that. Yeah.
My question, yesterday the government inked the deal finally between them and GPH for the $42 million project for the rehabilitation of the
Podcasters
and
so forth.
I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Pretty much from what I've read and learned, it hasn't changed much from what was said previously, so they're still going along with just the expansion and the renovation of Oxford.
Right. Well, we're hoping that the government, which touted accountability and transparency so much during their time in opposition, would now come out and tell the St. Lucian population, especially the constituents of Soufre, what is in this deal which they have finalized with GPH. However, the United Workers' Party, we still hold the view that the best approach would have been to develop Port View Fort into this home porting facility, which would have a significant economic impact for the entire southern quadrant of the population. With this agreement, we know that we've lost control of Port Castries and Port Soufre for 40 years, as well as Port View Fort. So it is important that they come out with all the details in the agreement so that the people of St. Lucia will know exactly what's in there.
If I can just make a comment here as well. You see, the hypocrisy of the St. Lucia Labour Party is rife. Whenever we engage foreign investors to participate in developing St. Lucia, investing in St. Lucia, there was always this talk about foreigners and selling our patrimony and all of these things. Here is a government that has literally given away one of our prime assets to foreigners.
40 years.
For 40 long years. Okay, many of us sitting here will not live to see 40 years, or further 40 years. And this, I think, is an ill-advised, ill-conceived move on the part of the government, because here we are where we know this is a definite cash cow, a profitable enterprise that the St. Lucia government and people could maximize the profits and benefits of such a project. And like my colleague said, in development, you don't just arbitrarily engage in development. You develop with a global, overall long-term view where the best possible position is taken for the benefit of the entire country. And as indicated, a home port at Viewfort for cruise ships would have benefited St. Lucia in tremendous ways. I mean, let us not forget, as a home port, I want St. Lucians to understand that as a home port, the people would have to come to St. Lucia to catch the cruise liner, which means that they would at least overnight here a couple of times, coming and going, which means that taxi drivers would benefit, restaurant owners would benefit, hoteliers would benefit, bars would benefit, and so on. Now, that would bring a lot more business to St. Lucia than the move that was made there. Not to mention, we have lost control of our prime assets, our ports, to the extent that my understanding is part of the agreement is that nothing should be done with the Viewfort ports for 40 years. I mean, just think about it. This is a government who were up in arms against Cabot. Okay? And the hypocrisy of that government, they marched, they demonstrated, they protested against the project. But today, that is one of the projects that they tout as an achievement.
They drink champagne and
and they are busy drinking champagne and toasting the opening of the project. And so we have to bear in mind when people seek to deceive for the sake of power, and we have seen it in many different forms by this current government, the deception of this current government and the double standards of this current government. I think this is another area, again, where the government should reconsider that move. And since they are so patriotic, as they made us believe when they were in opposition, show their patriotism by not relinquishing some of our prime assets to foreign companies and rendering us absolutely out of control of what really belongs to us. Talking about patrimony, preserve that.
Any more questions? All right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Have a blessed and wonderful day.
Thanks a lot to all of you from the media. I want to thank those of you who are listening to us live on social media, especially those of you in the diaspora. We invite you to continue to keep abreast with what's happening. We as an opposition will keep you informed, and we will take the necessary stance in the interest and the benefit of the people of St. Lucia. We know you are concerned about what happens at home, and you have an interest in what happens at home, so we will be keeping you informed. You can also give us your feedback as well, so that we can, benefit from your ideas as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Less than 2 years into the reign of the Labour regime, St. Lucia's patrimony is not only under threat by Philip Pierre's bad policies, but is being recklessly sold to friends, family and foreigners. The latest act of detaching St. Lucia from her most prized lands came with the sale of the Banand lands along the Castries Harbour. The lands were owned by the National Housing Corporation. In 2013, the 2.5 acres was valued at about $70 a square foot for a total cost value of $7 million, proving to be a valuable asset for the state. However, in December of 2021, a decision was taken by Housing Minister Richard Frederick to dispose of the high-value assets. Former SLP Senator and prospective candidate Terence Skinny Sinclair was hired to undertake the property valuation. His report assessed the market value at $3.5 million. That's half of what the lands were going for 10 years ago. Prime waterfront property enclosing one of the most scenic ports in the Caribbean, with thriving commercial and tourism activity. And for whatever reason, the value of the lands was further reduced to $25 a square foot for sale at a mere $2.5 million. The beneficiary? The daughter of Reno Kajada.
But has a different name. So was that because she's genuinely buying the land? Is that they were just trying to avoid detection?
UWP leader Alan Chastney has raised critical questions concerning this blatant act of nepotism. What becomes of the lands when the new owners of the Castries port come in? How would the land factor into the plans for the redevelopment of the harbor to include a fishing village at Banans Bay? Would the now owners sell it off for a hefty profit? Why were the lands not kept for national development? Why not allow Invest St. Lucia or SASPA to take ownership? According to Cedric, SASPA rejected an offer to purchase. But where were Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Philip Pierre, Investment Minister Ernest Delaire, and Infrastructure Minister Stevenson King?
So you're telling me it was offered to them and neither one of them saw it fit to cause SLASPA to go ahead and buy the land? Instead, the Minister of Housing said that there was no response from SLASPA. Why wasn't the land offered to Invest? Who is the Minister of Invest Solution? Isn't it not Ernest Hilaire? Is he not the district rep for that area? You would think that after spearheading the investment by GPH to fix up Banans, that would be a natural expansion, area of an expansion, and that by getting invested to buy it, give them the opportunity to make sure there was a proper development in that area. None of these people said anything.
The National Housing Corporation has become a pawn in the games that Richard plays, with a board too intimidated to challenge him. Chairman Mikey Pilgrim and Deputy Chairman John Peters have for years purported themselves to be men of integrity, but today sit idly by, aiding and abetting Richard Frederick in his deeds.
There was a property purchased at the bottom of the chaussee for $1.8 million, and the person they purchased the land from is the lawyer on the National Housing Committee. No question. Nobody sees anything wrong with this. We have no problems with it. This is not innuendo. These are facts that you can go and check for yourself. Go down to the registry.
Wake up, St. Lucia. This is just another example that Pierre is putting you worse.
Act of God clause in the loan.
What's
so
that?
if there is an act of God clause,
Yeah,
is
hurricane,
natural disaster. If a natural disaster happens, then they don't have to pay.
Okay. We need to know the details, the financial details and all of that.
You can't compare broken eggs with eggs. So mine.
Yes. It should be completed by 2028.
With the details.
Ready?
At what cost?
At what cost and what works will happen, what is gonna,
So
details.
basically, they received a loan from the Saudi Fund for Development for $75 million to reconstruct the old St. Jude's. They're going to reconstruct the old St. Jude's. They're going to have it enhanced for climate resilience. They're going to reconstruct the eastern, southern, and western wings. They're going to rehabilitate the stadium, and all of that to be completed by 2028.
The hospital as well, by 2028?
Well, they said the hospital as soon as possible. That's the Prime Minister's example.
Okay.
As soon as possible.
And is the stadium included in that 75 and that $200 million?
Yes.
Okay.
They're saying they have a 5-year grace period, and they're also saying that there's an act of God clause in the loan stating that if there is a natural disaster, that the don't have to pay?
They don't have to pay, or additional time will be given.
Well,
So we need more detail on this.
yeah. Well,
And,
yeah,
and,
he
the,
did
and,
not
the,
specify.
and the length of time of the
But he
loan as
said
well. The length,
they did not give the length of time of the loan.
the interest rate and all of that.
The interest rate at 2%. An interest rate of 2%. So, what is your reaction?
Well, we do not have all the details on what the arrangements are because I have not heard for myself what the Prime Minister has articulated with regard to what the arrangements are. But if that is the case, first of all, I want to express our gratitude to the Saudis. And I am hoping that this inept government that we have here makes the best use of the funds, the resources. And talking about wastage, the wastage really came when the government abandoned an almost completed new hospital that was designed and built for purpose. It was actually designed and being built to be a hospital and went back to an archaic building that is not suited for a purpose, and they are now going to spend that money on this building that will never be a state-of-the-art hospital. And as we know, as of now, there are all kinds of problems already being experienced in terms of electricals, in terms of plumbing and all of that. They have not even gotten approval by planning. So we are saying it is not too late, given the resources, that the funding that will be provided by the Arabs, that money be used to complete the almost completed state-of-the-art hospital that the United Workers' Party had begun for St. Lucians, and which would cost less of cost to complete, and the balance be utilized to upgrade the stadium. We are also interested in knowing how long it will take the government to complete those projects as well.
Okay. Well, what is your reaction to Prime Minister Philip J. saying that after a study there was no reason for those original buildings to be abandoned?
Well, I don't know which study he is quoting, but there are studies that clearly indicated that there were problems, there were limitations and restrictions as a result of the fact that that building was not suitable in terms of space, height of ceilings, the plumbing, the electricals, and all of these things. There were clearly cited problems that would cause restrictions and make a state-of-the-art hospital be prohibitive if you go to the old hospital. On the contrary, the new hospital was being built and designed according to the needs and the requirements of St. Lucia as a hospital. And I think that is what St. Lucians deserve, and that is what St. Lucians should get. And that business of abandoning the project just because it was not conceived by your administration, I think that is where, as a poor country, we squander a lot of scarce resources and we play politics ahead of the interests of our nation and our people.
Just to clarify, how much would it cost to complete the building that the Alan Shasta administration started?
Do you recall how much it was?
I don't recall.
I think it was said that it was about 80% complete,
Completed.
but I do not want to give you
I
any.
think it was an additional 35 to 40 million.
Okay.
Yes.
But it
because-
certainly was nothing in the region of $200 million. Certainly not.
Right, it was an additional approximately 40 million.
And let us remember, after having spent all of that money, you see, it's like taking my Samurai, and you can do all you want with it, it will never be a Rolls Royce. That is what we are experiencing now.
One last question from me. The Prime Minister applauded former Prime Minister Stephen King for having the foresight not to abandon the old building. Is that the truth? What was the policy of the Stephenson King administration when it came to the rehabilitation of St. Joe's?
Well, at the time, we were being given a grant by the Taiwanese government, and they would have provided the contractors to refurbish and complete the burnt building. That's the original building. And that's what was being considered. However, for some reason, we changed course. For some reason that Stevenson King would be best be able to divulge. We changed course, and the offer was not accepted, and it was not done. However, with the Alan Chasney regime, it was felt that if we are going to build a hospital, we might as well build a modern hospital, a state-of-the-art hospital that would provide for St. Lucians the best possible health care. I mean, you were looking at a hospital, it would even have a helipad, would have all kinds of facilities for dialysis and, all of those things. And then the intention was that we would refurbish eventually the old building. And we were looking at possibilities, included among them having it as a university, for facilities for a university hospital where training could be done. And of course, the hospital itself would be an asset for that university hospital, where it would benefit both the school and the state, given the fact that we would have those interns working at the hospital. I think, these are the kinds of plans, these are kind of programs that the United Workers' Party had in mind that would benefit St. Lucians and make our situation far better. Even when you look at the health insurance, what is being done now as opposed to what we were doing. I mean, we were going to implement, universal health care to St. Lucians, but we provide $75,000 coverage. That in itself would cover most major operations, okay? And it would be funded, yes, by the working class and the government, because those who couldn't afford, the government would come in and pay for them. Now you have a government who is telling you about health insurance, but what are we seeing? Another bluff. Life expectancy in St. Lucia is about 73 years, but they're providing free care to 80-year-olds. So in other words, what they're saying to you, they don't expect to provide any care for you. That's just a bluff. Because very few St. Lucians will live to see 80 years. So that is not even a program that will be implemented or be of any significance. Okay? Pregnant mothers and so on. Of course, that's ensuring that you do the bare minimum. Over the years, okay, I recall at one point, back when Ashanti sung about St. Lucia population, we had some 4,000 babies being born a year. It is less than 2,000 now, and decreasing. So, what really are they doing for St. Lucians? The bare minimum. That is not what we call healthcare. Healthcare is not a selective thing. I cannot choose not to be sick. All of us are prone to illness, so there should be coverage for all of us. And that is what the United Workers' Party had in mind, and that is how the United Workers' Party approach things in a wholesome, holistic, universal way. And that is the difference between Labour and UWP. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
$200 billion.
We need to hear more about
And it's still at 40, that's
I need to find out.